telling the truth. The colonel states that neither we nor our allies are prepared to fight an all-out war with Russia, and Americans should not be surprised if war breaks out between Russia and the U.S. That scares the hell out of me, folks. It should you too. Let's have the colonel come on now and weigh in, not only on the article, but on this latest revelation of sending tanks when the regime said we wouldn't send tanks, which leads me to believe, Colonel, we'll probably send fighters next. What are you hearing?
Well, Dan, it's hard to argue against you. This is farcical, let's be frank, because Ukrainian military power is disintegrating in front of us right now. They're on their last legs. They've been through 12 rounds of mobilization. They're pushing people at gunpoint into uniform. They've taken 400,000 casualties as a minimum.
Wow.
There are perhaps somewhere between 18 and 22 million people left in Ukraine out of a population of 37.5 million. 10 million refugees, 4 or 5 million living in the areas that are under Russian control where, of course, the people are Russians anyway. And then 2 million working overseas in the European Union and Great Britain. So the population is not what it was, and 400,000 casualties is a very heavy burden for 18 to 22 million. And most of these casualties will never recover and return to the battlefield. And of that number, remember 157,000 dead and counting. 75% of all the casualties taken by the Ukrainians result from Russian artillery systems, rockets, missiles, shells. The Russians can fire 60,000 rounds a day. The Ukrainians are barely able to fire 6,500 in return. This is a farce. We've now promised these people tanks that won't arrive for months. And the German chancellor is foolish to even sign on for this nonsense. He should have stuck with his guns. Now his foreign minister says, we're in a state of war with Russia. Imagine the foreign minister of Germany saying that Germany is in a state of war with Russia. Scholz is not long for his job, I think. About 63% of the Germans were polled and said, we don't support sending anything to Russia.
Wow.
So I think this farce is coming to an end. And I imagine, Dan, that the argument will be, well, we did all we could. We sent them everything we could, and it just didn't work.
Colonel,
the truth is, we've destroyed Ukraine.
You list these numbers, and these are numbers I don't hear anywhere in the mainstream media. Is that because the government doesn't release them? These journalists are lazy and don't do their research? How do we not have these facts out there on the big three, ABC, NBC, CBS, saying this is the reality of what's happening in this war, folks?
Well, you know, Dan, that unlike you and some people at Fox, a few over there, the rest of the media is basically handed a narrative that comes straight out of the Department of Defense, the CIA, and the White House, and the State Department. And the narrative says, this is what you're going to say. This is Putin's war. This is an unprovoked attack by the whole nonsense. We spent years provoking them, and the numbers that I'm citing to you are very accurate. And as people are looking at the demographics, they're figuring out where we're headed because, in addition to everything I just told you, the birth rate is the lowest in Europe, in Ukraine. I mean, we're literally killing this nation by pushing them forward into this war. So the only real rational explanation we can come up with here in the United States is this is a scam to transfer wealth to donors for people on the Hill, wealth to the industries.
You've heard me say it. It's a money laundering scheme. 30 seconds left. There was a tweet that President Trump put out, your former commander-in-chief you worked for, about what's happening here. First come the tanks, then come the nukes. Get this crazy war ended now. So easy to do. 30 seconds. How do you end it quickly, like Trump's claiming, Colonel?
What you have to do is say, we're going to hold an immediate ceasefire. We'll hold talks without preconditions and sit down with the Russians and hammer out a solution. They're willing to do that. They're not interested in carrying this war forward to the West. So Trump is absolutely right. And if we don't do this, there's always a danger that as everything collapses, someone in Washington will say, well, let's send in our troops with the Poles and the Romanians and try to hold on to what we can in Western Ukraine. That is a disaster. We cannot do that.